everyone, and welcome to Fabric Tech Talk Fridays. I'm your host, Patrick LeBlanc, and today I'm here with my friend Andy. Andy, before we get started, why don't you tell the people who you are and what you do?
Thanks very much, Patrick. Yeah, it's great to be here. So my name is Andy Cutler from the UK, and I'm actually, I would say, 100% fabric consulting now.
All right.
Over the last year,
All right.
it's like really accelerated. Before that, Synapse Analytics, I have a history in data warehousing, primarily using Azure data technology. And yeah, like I said, it's been so busy with Fabric for the last year. Fabric.
Not a bad thing.
Not a bad
Not
thing
a
at
bad
all.
thing.
Not a bad thing at all.
Okay, so Andy, you and I watched the video you put out on YouTube, and you and I have been talking about materialized views. We have a little bit. And so why don't you give us a quick introduction of what they are, just real quick.
Yeah, just really quickly. So Materialized Lake Views, it's a way of declaring your data transformations as well as the schema that you want to create. So instead of having to create tables and create views, managing the schema, you do define that in the data transformation.
Yeah.
Also, it's not just about defining the data transformation, it's defining the order in which things are loaded.
So that's really important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm a lazy person. I don't
Lazy. You're not lazy. You're efficient.
efficient.
Yes.
I don't really want to have to spend my time working out what's got to load before something else loads.
Yeah.
So MLVs, Materialized Lake Views, creates the dependency for us.
Sure.
So we just define what we're loading from. So those from statements, those join statements in SQL, the MLV process will work out which tables need to be loaded in which order. So it's a time saver.
So it seems like using these lake views, lake views, is less dependent on infrastructure and more dependent on the derivation of your schema from the code.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to be careful in your data transformations.
Sure.
It's going to infer the data type from your source. If you want to force a specific data type,
Right.
you do that in your transformation.
Okay. Yeah.
You do that in your transformation.
Yeah, but it's easily handled, right? As opposed to me writing a schema, adjusting the schema.
Easier.
Right? It's easier to handle in some code as opposed to. All right. So enough of all this talking. We like to do. Let's head over to your machine.
You go to my laptop.
Yeah.
My laptop.
To your laptop. Yeah.
Okay. So you can see it on the screen. I've got a lake house. I'm not going to go through the process of creating a lake house. And I've got 4 tables. These are actually shortcuts from a source lake house. I'm not going to constantly load the same data. Got it in there.
It's already being loaded in it.
Already been loaded.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to transform the data in those tables downstream for a fact table, for some dimensions, and maybe an aggregate table as well for some results.
Okay.
Right. So what we'll do is I'm going to show you 2 ways in which to create the MLVs. One, through the standard way, the syntax, and then the second, just a little framework that I've built to help manage the process of MLVs without you having to worry about the creation itself. It'll all make sense when I go through the demo. Ready?
Yep. Let's go.
Okay. So in my notebook, we can write SQL. PySpark is coming, I believe, but at the moment it's SQL. Now I've got a schema that I've created. Let me just refresh. I've created the schema MLV in my lakehouse, and I can issue a create materialized lake view command. Now that select statement, I can have all my transformations in there. I'm keeping it simple. The transformation itself is not the point, it's just the process. But if I run that cell, hopefully Fabric's quick starter pools is going to get that job running.
All right.
Okay, there we go. We're already running. I've got some table properties that I can add, a comment, some tagging. And when I run that, let me just expand the MLV folder. I've got what looks like a table. Now, in effect, it is a table. It's storing the data. It's not a virtualized table. It's not a table that's referencing data. The data exists in that table. in an object called a materialized lake view.
Sure.
Now, when it finishes and I refresh, we'll get a little icon to show it's a delta table, but actually there will be a little lightning bolt to show you it's a materialized lake view.
So I can distinguish.
Yes.
So it honestly lets me know this is AMV.
So if you've got delta tables within your lake house, if you've got materialized lake views, if you've got unmanaged tables, you've got the little icon there to show you what it is.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine. So we can create the view. We've got some metadata about that materialized lake view. We can query the metadata as well and say, well, what materialized lake views have we got in the lake house? There we go. We've just got one at the moment. I can't alter the definition of the MLV other than renaming it. So I have to drop it and recreate it.
Okay.
Okay, so that's this is where we start to get
Somewhat of a
management
limitation right now.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they'll continue to.
I would say that it's not really any fault of Microsoft. It's simply that you're materializing the data.
Yeah.
So you may as well recreate it.
Now, one thing that I really like about this, and I know you said Python or PySpark should be maybe on its way. This is just SQL. SQL. And if we polled an audience, if we polled the audience here with us and said how many people can write SQL, most hands will go up. If we said how many people can write PySpark, not as many.
A little bit.
So
a little
it's
bit.
easy, right? This is user tools.
I mean, why not implement a common language across anything? And it's we know all these cloud services are just always adding SQL features. It's not going away.
It's not going away.
Not going away.
It's not going away.
Not going away.
Thank you. I'm happy it's not going away.
There you go. Yeah, same as me.
Yeah.
We can add constraints. So we can, instead of filtering data out while we're loading, we can add a constraint in that will redirect bad rows that don't meet that. And that's important because there is some metadata that we can surface to show the number of rows that have been redirected based on that constraint.
Yeah.
So instead of filtering it out at the source and potentially not understanding what your data quality is, we've got it here.
It's kind of like putting a constraint on a table, but I have more options to do something with that.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm just going to run the create table state, create materialized view on this.
Down there.
Here we go. It doesn't matter. We'll scroll it down. Because I'm going to show you an easier way of creating these materialized lake views in a little while.
Yep.
We do have full control over refreshing the materialized lake view, right? So we can run a refresh. You can also force a full refresh. If we run a refresh and none of the source data has changed, because that's another thing that materialized lake view is tracking, if nothing's changed, it won't run.
That's efficient.
It's efficient.
Yeah, it's
Won't run
absolutely
it.
efficient.
And again, so this is doing a full refresh. Incremental's coming soon.
Yep.
Right, which it'll
make things so much easier.
manage large tables so much easier.
Yep.
And what I'll do is I'm actually going to show the lineage of this just very simple MLV.
Yep.
And then we'll get into the auto creation of them.
Yep.
Okay. So if I just go to my lake house, click on the manage materialized lake views.
Wow.
Oh, hang on. That was from the previous one. Hang on, there we go. Okay. It's very simple.
Yeah.
Right? We've only created one table. Right?
Sure.
There we go. One table. If I click on it, we get a nice little lineage diagram to show where it's come from. Pretty simple.
But if that materialized view depended on tables, that depended on tables, that depended on tables, we can see the entire lineage.
See the entire thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's do that. Right. Let's create a process where we're going to load it from the raw into some dimensions, into a fact table, and then create.
Okay. And let's do it. We're going to do all that here in the next minute. Okay.
Yep. So I've just been playing around a little bit with a framework. Yes, it's written in Python, but I can write that programmatically. And what I'm going to do is just delete that existing MLV that I've created.
You can back it up or anything.
No,
No,
it's
okay.
gone. It's gone. I'll keep the schema there.
Okay.
But now what I've done is I've created a folder structure in my lake house. Let's have a look at that. For my files, MLV. I'm just going to do a quick refresh of that view. Scroll down. And what I'm going to do, this is from a previous run, so I'm just going to remove that file.
Okay.
What I've done is just written some code that will look within the folders. And each of these is just a SQL statement.
Okay.
So I've taken the create table, the create materialized view away and just put that in the automated process. So anyone who's used any other declarative frameworks, I'm kind of mirroring the same thing here, where I've got a folder structure and I'm just going to create those map views from the process. So I've got some dimensions, I've got a fact table, and then I've got an aggregate table that's going to join those together. So let's run my little framework process. Now this is on GitHub at data high, so I'll
We'll get a
when
link.
the video,
We'll get a link.
all
We'll
the
get a
links
link.
will be in there. This will be the last thing that we need to run successfully. So let's see.
Okay.
Okay, we've got this.
So when this completes, so this is just going through running those statements in an order. I'm assuming.
Yes.
And then when it's complete, we'll have the entire
We'll have the entire
inferred infrastructure.
Yep. And what it does is the file name defines the name of the MLV. Well, we've also got a dot notation of a schema. So, for example, you can see I've got gold.ag web telemetry.
Yep.
If it doesn't find a gold schema, it'll just create the gold schema.
Got it.
So it's doing that all for us. So it's just going through, iterating through that folder structure, taking those SQL definitions and running the create materialized view statements.
But think about how does this really simplify the entire infrastructure of this medallion architecture that you're creating?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
you really only care about the transformations.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
If you want to remove a materialized lake view, you simply delete the SQL file and it drops it when you next run it.
Yeah.
If you want to change the definition of the view, you go in, modify the file. Next time the process runs, it just picks up the fact that the definition has changed, drops it, recreates it. So that's it. I've just ran a script, written my SQL transformations. Now if I go into my materialized lake view and refresh, there we go. So we have our raw tables. Actually, let's move that one down there. We've got the dimension tables that feed off the raw tables. We've got that fact table that's loading and using metadata from those dimension tables. And then the last thing is
Our ag table.
that gold. So if I click on that gold table, all right, we can see the lineage of everything that is required.
Or that particular table.
That particular table,
Yep.
we can look at event type and see that event type itself feeds from raw, goes down into web telemetry and aggregate. Now I can just schedule these materialized lake views. If the data changes, it's just going to refresh. And it's as simple as that.
Simple as that. Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us about materialized views. If you have any questions or comments, you know what to do. Post them in the comments below. If this is your first time visiting the Fabric YouTube channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And as always, from Andy and myself, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to hit that like button.
If this is your first time visiting the Microsoft Fabric YouTube channel, be sure to smash that subscribe button.
Drop a comment below on what you would like to see on the future episodes of Fabric Tech Talk Fridays.
That's it for today. See you all next Friday for another deep dive in the Microsoft Fabric.